right, hello, and welcome to episode 26 of Plays Well with Others, our podcast about building and participating in teams and highly effective teams and actually enjoying doing it. As always, I am your host, Andrew Moore, and I'm joined by my illustrious co-host, Jess Agnew. So, if you tuned into episode 25, our last episode, you will have heard that this is now part two of a special two-part episode about interviewing. The last episode, episode 25, was all about the interviewer's perspective and walking through how our experiences led us to believe you should lead interviews or organize interviews. This episode, we're going to sit on the other side of the table and we're going to talk primarily about the interviewee's perspective and some tips and tricks and things that we look for as hiring managers, as well as things that we've leveraged throughout our careers in various roles, not necessarily corporate only roles. This is what Jess and I were talking about before the episode, is we want to make this as inclusive as we can. So whether you're interviewing for a position at Lowe's as a sales associate, as a cashier, if this is your first job, you're, high school kid, whatever, we want to make sure that you can get some value out of this as well, not just I'm interviewing for an engineer. Most things are the same. Most things
are the same.
You're just probably not going to be asked about the intricacies of Java development as a cashier, but you
might. Who knows? So I'm kind of kick it off. An example of something you shouldn't do. I used to work at a certain electronic big box store, and I was sitting in the office working on something while my manager at that store was doing an interview for just a sales rep position. And he was maybe 17 and had a little trouble controlling the F-bombs.
The manager or the candidate?
And it was just an automatic no. The candidate.
Okay.
Good question. The candidate had a little trouble controlling the F-bombs. And it was an automatic no. And I think that's probably pretty safe to say across the board. Go ahead and prep yourself to not drop that particular type of language when you're in an interview situation. Doesn't matter what position you're interviewing for. Unless maybe you feel like you have that relationship and you built that camaraderie as the interview has progressed, and maybe let the interviewer make the language selection first.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Well, I think that's good advice for most social situations. Let the other person rip the F-bomb Band-Aid off first.
Yeah.
Sometimes even with coworkers, and I know we're going off the rails a little bit already, 3 minutes in, but sometimes even with coworkers, it's months before that Band-Aid gets ripped off. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
You speak fluent developer.
Everyone plays
I got
nice
it.
for a little while. Oh man.
So before we jump in, we like to share some of our experience, some of our stories, things like that. And we didn't exchange notes before this, so we don't have a really planned spot to inject the stories. So I'm going to go ahead and start, because I can't even begin to imagine where this story will meaningfully fit in. And I don't want to lose the opportunity.
I'm already hooked. Go. Story time.
All right. So welcome to story time. Crisscross applesauce, sit on the rug. So one of the first professional interviews I had out of college was with a recruiting agency here in Nashville. And this was back in the day before pandemics and work from home was as prolific as it is now. So I had to go in person. I had a recruiter reach out to me and say, hey, you want to be a junior developer? We've got some roles. And for those of you that haven't gone through this before, for developer roles with recruiting agencies, mostly the recruiting agency wants to meet with you first to know you know what you're talking about, and not just send over candidates that wind up making them look foolish. So I went over to their office, and this particular office, for those of you in Nashville, and it may even be OG Nashvillians, So y'all will remember where the Outback Steakhouse is on West End. So right off the interstate, it's gorgeous building set way back. It's by Maggiano's now, but the building on the front is all restaurant, and around back there's some office spaces. And so I go to the address and I look, and I'm like, well, I'm probably not interviewing in an Outback. They didn't say that we're having lunch, so I'm looking for an office, and I go around back, and there's 3 doors. 2 of them are locked and dark, and one of them's open. And it's a law firm. It's another famous law firm that you've seen billboards and television, kind of the ambulance chaser type. So I just walk in, and there's nobody in there. So I'm poking my head. This law firm office is completely empty until finally I go all the way in the back and find somebody in an office. And hey, how do I get to this agency's office? And like, well, you can go through this door. And they let me through a door in their copy room that led out into this interior hallway. And it says all the way at the end. Okay. So I walk all the way down there. I find the office. Still, it's not clear to me how to get to this place. I have no idea how I would have found it. And so I go in, I have my interview, and I asked the recruiter, I said, okay, so I got here in a little bit of a unique way. How do I get out? And so she tells me, go to the end of the hallway. There's a stairwell. You can go down the stairs and out. Okay, cool. So I just assumed I came in like on a weird floor, and that's why I couldn't find it. Well, I go in the stairwell. Door shuts behind me. It's an interior stairwell. All of the doors are locked, like from the other side. So I am stuck in this stairwell.
What?
I can't go up, can't go down. I finally go to the very bottom. Like it's one of those stairwells where it stops at the last door, and then there's like trash and storage and almost certain horror movie death if you keep going. I'm like, well, I'm going to keep going. And it led out in the kitchen of the Outback Steakhouse. And I guess I was in the, like, wherever I was, nobody there spoke English. They all speak Spanish. And fun fact about Andrew, Andrew speaks enough Spanish to be dangerous. And so I'm talking to these people like, I don't work here. I promise.
How did I get here?
I don't know how to get out. And so they walked me out through the kitchen, and I walked out through the Outback Steakhouse restaurant and walked back up the hill, got in my car, and left.
What in the world?
I did not
How
go back.
do you get there? Did you ever learn how to get there?
I have no earthly idea.
You went in through a copy room and left through a kitchen at Outback Steakhouse. That's probably one of the... It's a really good demonstration of why you should do this next thing that I'm about to say, though. Before I go anywhere, I always look it up on Google Map, look at the street view, and try and figure out what the front of the building looks like and what door I go through, because I have many wonderful skills, many wonderful skills. Directions are not one of them. I am terrible with directions and just spatial awareness. I run into door frames constantly. Like, I'm a mess. And so if I'm going to a place I have never been before and I need to look professional and not sweaty and stressed out, then I go look at the Google Maps. I look at the storefront. I try and figure out what the place looks like. I get there like 20 minutes early so I can sit in my car and like plan my route into the building like a psychopath. But it is so important for me for an interview to know where I am going. And if I can talk to someone who works there and get like the down low, I'm like, is there like a person at the front door? Do I have to go up the elevator to get to the entrance desk? Is there going to be someone there, or is there not going to be someone there? There's not going to be anyone there. What do I do? Like, I'm anal about knowing what I'm walking into.
I am as well, but this was also during the Dark Ages.
After that.
This was
during the Dark Ages where there is no friend.
I printed off a single sheet of MapQuest directions that all it got me was, oh, this is at the Outback building.
I forgot about MapQuest.
Yeah. We're in Outback. Cool.
It wasn't wrong.
No.
I mean, MapQuest wasn't wrong.
It really wasn't.
If you had just started at Outback, you could have gone up through their kitchen. Obviously, that would have been your first instinct, right? To go all the way back to the kitchen, go up a dark stairwell where it looked like you were going to get murdered to get to your interview.
Well, that's another funny story. I know. We will get to the content, I promise. I did get MapQuest directions one time to a place that was under heavy construction, and the roads didn't exist that MapQuest told me to take. So I
Fine.
stopped at a hotel and went up to the concierge and said, "Hey, I'm looking for such and such place." And I kid you not, twin blondes. They said, "We've been here in the country for 2 months. We are from Canada. Don't know where anything is." Okay, good. Just gonna go drive around some more.
I'm just gonna panic. It's fine. It's no big deal.
I had that covered.
At that point, I turn around and go home. It doesn't matter.
It's not that important.
So aside from also knowing where you're going and trying to figure out as much as you can about like physical location, if you have to go somewhere physically, prep for an interview is definitely where we want to start talking, because there's a lot you can do to make or break your interview experience prior to ever walking in the door. I mean, everybody knows the normal things like don't smell bad, fix your hair in a professional manner. And that means different things to different people. I have really long hair, and people don't always necessarily. I got a lot of recommendations to make sure I wear my hair in a ponytail or pull it back, or look as not long hair as possible. I don't personally follow that advice anymore. I used to, but I don't anymore. I think it's a little ridiculous. So I have long hair. It is what it is. But I still make sure it's clean and nice and set properly. I wear minimal jewelry, so I wouldn't wear something long like this. I would keep it just a smaller stud or something a little bit smaller. I don't wear big chunky jewelry. I wear something a little bit more delicate. I do wear a jacket if possible, a collar shirt if not. Things like that, I think, you're just setting an expectation. You're trying to appear more of a professional blank slate. So nothing too important there.
Dress for the job, and in most cases, dress a step above the job. So there's obviously a lot of intricacy and nuance when it comes to the female dress code.
There is. And I think what you're kind of hinting at is important to talk about, because some work locations they'll be a little bit more informal, and they'll tell you before you come in, "Oh, don't wear a suit." You should listen to that advice. If they specifically tell you not to wear a suit, you should fit in with the feel of the environment, because you're trying to build a camaraderie sort of, we get each other. You want that relationship to develop on a positive note. If you dress in a way that they tell you specifically not to, that's not a good start.
Well,
so there is a lot of nuance to this. But if you don't have other direction, professional blank slate sort of attire is what you're looking for.
Yeah, for me, I want to make sure that I'm communicating that I'm communicating and that the candidate is communicating that they care about this, that this is important.
Yes.
So you walk in the door, and what you're trying to do is develop a good first impression, and your first impression is almost always going to be visible. There are caveats to that, obviously, but in most cases, if you're interviewing for a role, you want to walk in and have somebody look at you and say, "There's a responsible person." And for me, I generally always wear at least a shirt and tie to an interview, and I'll wear a jacket. And if I'm trying to step it down, maybe it's jeans versus slacks. If I'm trying to, and if you've never seen me below chest height, for those of you listening, but I'm a boot wearer, so like sometimes it's a little bit more of a fashion statement to wear a crazier pair of boots versus normal reserved. All of this is, your mileage may vary, but at the end of the day, make sure that you're trying to communicate professionalism with how you dress, your bearing, how you carry yourself.
Yep.
Don't slouch, don't keep looking around, make eye contact, firm handshake, hello, it's good to meet you. The thing that I've been trying to do more is be expressive in my face, because I don't mostly. And so especially after starting the podcast, when I go back and watch myself on video, like, wow, you look kind of severe. So like trying to
stoic.
Yeah, trying to like smile with my eyes and
be demonstrative.
Yes, and that is not my personality, but here we are.
It's mine, but I know what you mean. Sometimes I need to like calm it down a little.
Yeah.
But I do think that's important. Kind of physically preparing yourself is definitely an important step in the interview process. Before you go in, you should also do a little reading about the company. Um, Honestly, I don't go crazy with this personally. I want to know enough. Like, I'll look at some Glassdoor reviews, I'll check their company website and try and learn like what's their motto, what do they stand for. I definitely want to know what they do. I mean, at the very minimum, you need to know that.
Mhm.
I want to have some understanding of what the type of culture is before I walk in there. And you can generally get that. You can piece it together both from the company website, some reviews, etc. But really understanding kind of like different companies have different ways of approaching business. And a lot of that will come to play in how they present their selves online in terms of what's their motto or their mission statement, etc. And those are generally publicly available. So doing some level of research on the company before you go in, I think it's a must. What about
Yeah.
you, Andrew?
Well, yeah. I do tend to go a little crazy on this part because my goal for and it's another one of those nuanced situations. So you may be in the position where your goal is to get a job because you need income, right? And there's nothing
Hmm.
wrong with that. But for me, where I'm at in my career, a lot of what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to be an impact. Like I want to come
Hmm.
into your company so that I can provide value. And so from that
Yeah.
perspective, I need to know as much as I can find out what is your business model, what are your challenges, what are you good at, how do you separate yourself from the rest of the industry so that I can have an intelligent conversation with so I can hopefully have an intelligent conversation with the hiring manager. See episode 25. But in
Yeah.
any case, you're trying to know what the role is going to look like so that you can best
Yes.
express why you're a good fit.
Mhm. So I think what you just said there kind of leads into the next thing that I like to do. I like to, obviously, the job description, you have that. You know what the job description is, you know what the type of role is. I like to actually look into, if I don't already know, I like to look into what my expectations for a role like that would be, what I would expect to bring to the table, what I would expect to get out of my company, but also what, like Andrew's talking about, what would I bring to the role? And for me, it's a little bit more targeted into how can I be impactful within this particular role, and what do I think I would bring to the table that would be unique or special or whatever to help contribute
Yeah.
that. And those are things that it's really important, I think, to think through that before you go into the interview, because it colors how you're going to answer every question. Because you don't want to be flabbergasted or, nervous in the interview by a hardball question that you now have to answer on the spot and not have a base of what am I trying to do here? And we've talked previously about having a personal mission statement that goes with you throughout
Mhm.
your career, company to company. And honestly, it's not the worst idea to kind of define that personal mission statement before you go into an interview, because then you know who you are and what you want to do professionally. And that is something that you can talk about in this interview of, like, this is where I really think I can make an impact within an organization. Um, that might be more for corporate level jobs, but it's not the worst idea to think through some of that in like a sales level job or whatever position you're going into, just so that you have an idea of why you're a standout candidate, because you need
Right.
to tell them why you're a standout candidate. That's what you're doing.
Right. And one thing that I do, because Jess, what you were mentioning is like know your stuff going in. So if this is your first job, if this is, if you're applying for a job and you don't have a bulk of skills or a history in that industry, it's kind of new out the gate. The thing you're an expert in is you. That's where your expertise is.
Yeah.
So when the interviewer comes in and asks, they're going to ask a lot of questions. They're not going to ask about your experience, probably, because it's not relevant experience in all
They have
cases.
it.
But what I do, and for those of you on video, I keep a brown leather notebook that it has my resume in it. It has a legal pad that I've taken notes on the company, notes on the hiring manager. Something for nothing on this one. I have always on the beside the hiring manager written down how long the company has been in business and how long the hiring manager has been with the company. because that it's a nice little detail to drop that's like, well, I know you've been here 2 years, but how did the company go on for the other 18 before you joined? It shows without being like
That's a good one.
weird,
I like that tip.
right? Without being weird, it shows that you did some research. But
Yeah,
I keep my resume in here on one side and I keep my company notes on the other side so that as people are interviewing me, they're, hey, what about what would you do at this company? Okay, I got it right here. Make sure I don't speak out of turn, or make sure I'm not sitting there going, I don't remember. Uh, it just helps to keep me on track and keep me thinking about the things that are actually important, which is how do I answer this
yeah,
question versus what year did I work at this last company?
I love that. And then I think the final thing is, well, two things, I guess. One, it's not the worst idea, especially if it's, kind of first jobs that you've ever done. We talked a lot about interviewer styles in the last call, and you are going to interview with some people who are just going to be like straight by the book questions that they're going
Mm-hmm.
to ask you. And it's not the worst idea to look online and say, okay, I'm interviewing for this position. Give me some sample interview questions. And you can find those on the line online, and you can have some answers kind of like thought through. The whole strength and weakness thing, it's not a bad idea to go ahead and have thought through what you're going to say if somebody asks you your greatest strength and your greatest weakness. And the answer for that is always, you have your greatest strengths. I'm dependable. I have a freakishly good memory that I will be able to bring to bear to help you out. I'm super organized, whatever those are. And then your, things that you're not good at, those tend to be the extremes of your strengths, right? Like, I care too much.
Don't do that.
Or I'm really detail oriented. Mine honestly is, I'm really detail oriented. And if I don't watch myself, I can sometimes spend too long on a task that really I need to move forward because I want to make sure everything's perfect.
Right.
That's a safe answer for your weaknesses, because you want to be two things. You want to be somewhat honest, right? Obviously, but you also don't want to be like, oh, like, I've got a weak elbow. Like, it's irrelevant to the position. They need to know things that,
Well,
relate to what they're talking about.
so we did bring up in our pre-interview as we were talking through how do we want to do this episode, we did bring up like how much information do you share in an interview, and we were talking specifically
Yeah.
about what when somebody asks you, because every interviewer in the world is going to say, why are you looking, or why did you leave your last company? Now,
Mm-hmm.
my perspective on that is very similar to yours when you're giving your greatest weakness. Is it's a strategic value. So I'm giving you
Mm-hmm.
information that is not, it's not false. It is true information, but it's structured in a way that comes off sounding good. So in the question
You're
of,
basically being a politician for about an hour. You need to spin the truth.
it's not spin.
I'm exaggerating to a certain extent.
Well, you're not being dishonest by omitting facts. Like,
Exactly.
if you got fired
No,
in your
very
last
much
job
so.
because you punched your boss in the nose, well, I don't know about that one. Like, I don't think you should bring it
I
up in
don't
an
know how to
interview.
answer that one. Maybe don't do that, but also definitely don't bring that up.
Right. This is not legal advice. We are not legal professionals. Please consult your attorney before you don't bring up that you punched your last boss in the nose. Uh, but it is a
But if
good
you
topic.
have things like there was a toxic work, if it was a toxic work environment where there was literally no personal time, it was encroaching on every aspect of your life and you were just completely fried after working there, maybe don't say that. There are better ways to, Andrew, I
Yeah.
mean, how would you phrase that? You had a toxic work environment, you were stressed out because you were working all the time. How would you say that?
So I've actually had people give me this answer before in a really nice way. And it was mostly something to the effect of our goals were not well aligned. And I've had, this is a
There you
protected
go.
class. You can't ask this question, but as an interviewee, I can offer the information to say, you know what, we're trying to start a family and I just didn't have the ability, or we didn't have the time to invest in.
You can say that if you're a man. As a woman, I would recommend you not say that, by the way. And as awful as that sounds, I would recommend you not say that. But
Yeah,
you can say our goals were misaligned.
fair,
That is
fair.
perfectly acceptable.
And that's it highlights the nuance of the process. And
It does.
I don't want to leave this episode with your mileage may vary. It's hard, but to encapsulate all of this and start, we're approaching the runway, so we're in long final right now. So to start encapsulating what we're trying to say is, as an interviewee, you want to come in with as much ammo as you can so that the conversation that you have with your interviewer is fruitful. You want that person to feel like you are
Yeah.
engaged, that you have a skill set, whatever that is, that would provide value to his or her company, team, whatever. And from there, you're interviewing that company as well, because you don't want to take a
Exactly.
role that they give you the sun, moon, and stars and give you the offer, and then 3 weeks, 4 weeks later, you say, "Oh crud, this isn't great. This isn't going to last long," and then you have to be in that awkward
Yeah.
situation of, "Well, I've been here a month. I'm gonna go find another job because that sucks."
Yeah. And, there's always the feedback of look them in the eye, give a good handshake, have an open countenance,
Right.
don't cross your arms, lean forward, be engaged, etc. Those are all great pieces of advice. I think what Andrew's getting at is a really cool way to kind of talk about the undertone of how you want to conduct yourself in the interview. It's a shared experience when you're working with a company to get hired there, right? Like you are going to spend a significant amount of time at this location. So when they say, "Do you have any questions for me?" Have questions, ask questions. The one that I get all the time as an interviewer is, "What's the company culture like?" And I don't think that's a bad question. You can absolutely ask that. Although I think there are some other questions you can ask that get to that same point in maybe a more roundabout way. So maybe you get a better feel for what the
Mm-hmm.
company culture is. In fact, I read one the other day, I think it was on Reddit, but I'm not sure, where basically the guy was saying, if anytime I'm in an interview, I always ask the question, "Can you tell me something that one of your current employees has done that was celebrated, or that was really great, or one of the biggest accomplishments by someone on your current team?" Well, it's a great way to find out from the person, okay, well, do they notice when their team does something really good? Do they have an example on the top of their head? And also, when they answer that question, was it, "Well, they canceled a vacation so they could stay and help the company when on our greatest hour of need," or "They worked for 3 weekends straight so that they could take care of things." That tells you how they value their employees' time and how potentially encroaching that's going to be on your own personal time if you do work at that company, versus if they go, "Oh, they automated this process that allows us to not have to do, X number of administration tasks manually anymore, and it's
Mm-hmm.
increased the efficiency of the entire team." That's a great answer. Awesome. Like, sign me up. Or is it something innovative, something that's cutting edge that you guys are already looking into as a company? That's really cool. That might be a really exciting environment to work in. If they're looking at new things and interested in new things, then you know that they appreciate new ideas. So these can be really cool, like just questions to ask that can kind of get to the same point of what's the culture, but maybe not asking it outright.
Yeah, and it's, as an interviewer, you should prepare these answers in advance, because if you don't, you're going to wind up in the boat where you're trying to think of it on on command, and then it takes time, and then you get nervous, and the person's sitting there like, "Wow, you can't think of the last thing that
Yeah.
somebody did that was good. That's great." So that's why both of these episodes are valuable to both personas in the equation. But I
For
I
sure.
do like that topic, because in my personal interviews, as well as people I have interviewed, I have learned as much, if not more, about the viability of the candidate by the questions that they ask rather than the questions that I ask. Because, like we talked about last episode, you can't know everything, you can't predict everything. And so there's going to be scenarios where this candidate or you have a skill set that they didn't ask about. I've gotten around that as an
Mhm.
interviewer by asking at the end, like, "What do you wish I'd asked you? Like, what's something you can highlight?" But even then, that doesn't really capture it all the time. So if you start out as an interviewee asking about, "Hey, I've never worked in the mortgage industry. Can you tell me how that's been different in your experience from other industries?" Or, "Hey,
Yeah.
I have, if I'm applying to a position at Lowe's, hey, I have experience as a cashier at Tractor Supply, how does that, in your experience, map to this role that I'm applying for now? Do you see candidates that work
Yeah.
better than others? What is a a personality trait or a capability that you've seen candidates that really succeed have? All of those questions show
One of
engagement.
my Yeah. One of my favorites is even asking, why are you filling this role? Is someone leaving? Is this a new role for your organization?
Mm-hmm.
And if it is a new role, that takes you into oh, great. Well, tell me, like, what are you looking for? Why are you creating this? Tell me about the kind of capabilities that you think are going to make this role a success.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're replacing someone, oh, great. Like, can you tell me the things that, they brought to the table that you think are just crucial for the replacement for them? Or things like that can kind of lead into some additional questions. And it's a human nature thing where we want to feel heard. So, giving your interviewer some questions where they have an opportunity to talk a little bit more, and that automatically makes them feel more engaged when they feel heard too. So, if they've just interviewed you and asked questions the entire time, they may not feel that they've been engaging with you. They may not feel that connection with you,
Right.
versus if you also ask questions back and they get an opportunity to talk back, that can also help with the, feeling that, oh, hey, we really connected. This person seems like they're really engaged or really smart or whatever that may be.
Yeah. Well, that's Dale Carnegie, isn't it? Let people talk about themselves. How to win friends and influence
It's
people.
a common it's a common influence practice for salespeople and all sorts of different roles, as people want to talk.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, like we've talked about in the last episode, you're looking not just for a thing that has skills. You're looking for a person that's going to join a team. You are looking to join a team,
Yeah.
and you want to make sure that you are a good fit. You have an opportunity to succeed. You have an opportunity to progress, and that your needs are met as well as the employers. And so it's why the interview is such an important opportunity to share both sides of the street. And there is so much more here that we could go for, like, we
Yeah.
could probably do another episode, but right now this is a 2-part episode. Maybe there's season 2 of the interview process.
Season 2 of the interview process. Maybe the last thing to say is just do your best to be calm. Let yourself make a mistake if you've made a mistake, and don't assume it ruins everything. As we gave the advice to the interviewers in the last episode, don't that one thing shouldn't kill the entire situation. How you recover and how you do better and how you relax and engage, those things matter.
Yeah.
So just try and stay calm. Don't stress out too much. Try and have a personality and show a little bit of that in the interview.
Yeah. At the end of the day, have a conversation, make a connection, and let the chips fall where they may. If you're a good fit, you're a good fit. If you're
Let the
not,
chips
you're
fall where
not.
they may.
So that seems like the appropriate place to end this episode 26. If you've made it this far, as always, really appreciate you listening and tuning in. We hope that you'll take some time right now to go ahead, share, like, subscribe, rate, do all of those things, whether you're listening to us in audio or if you're with us over on YouTube and video. Go ahead, drop us a line, because we're really interested to hear your perspectives on interviewing, whichever side of the table you're sitting on. And while you're at it, go ahead and share with us the craziest interview story you've got. Mine obviously being getting locked in the Outback Steakhouse bowels. I'm
I
curious.
don't think I could top that.
Somebody can. And if you have to make it up, that's fine. I won't criticize
Oh
you for being
gosh.
a good storyteller. So, as always,
Nice.
this has been Plays Well with Others. I'm Andrew Moore, joined with Jess Agnew. Thanks for listening.